Welcome to the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast. Real inspiration for real innovators. If you're looking for innovation and leadership transformation, your journey starts now.
Welcome to the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Born. If you're enjoying these innovation insights, don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss a future episode. By following the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast, we will be staying at the forefront of trends, strategies, and real-world examples that guide today's innovators. And I'm so excited to have Rene Sonneveld on the podcast. Today, we're going to take a little bit of a different angle as we talk about leaders, and we're also going to talk about the family legacy of leaders. So what I love about what Rene is going to bring to the table is we're going to talk about how future leaders can shape tough family conversations that they need to have. Not only is Rene a global executive, but he was a diplomat before. Now he coaches leaders and teams through major transitions with clarity, courage, and purpose. Rene, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, and thank you, Natalie. I'm delighted to join you. I've worked with leaders and families from all over the world, and what fascinates me is this innovation often emerge not from certainty, but from the place where we feel stuck, confused, or even afraid. So I'm excited to dive into that space with you and your listeners today.
That's great. Well, I would love to talk about your book. I mean, there's something that you say in your book. You talk about the elephant in the family room is never invisible. It's just that no one dares to name it. I'd love to know what you mean by that. I mean, today we're talking to business leaders, entrepreneurs, innovators. We're talking to movers and shakers, but sometimes there are people probably left behind in that conversation, and often that's the family.
And so I wrote the book based The Elephant in the Family Room, based on my experience working with large family enterprises, or let's say enterprise families that own businesses. But the elephant in the room itself, obviously that holds true for any type of situation in leadership. And when leaders avoid naming the elephant, because maybe they think it's impolite to name it, two things happen. First, the energy, and this sounds maybe a little bit holistic, but the energy gets trapped. And second, creativity collapses. Because you cannot innovate when everybody is walking on eggshells. And I have seen that in families with billion-dollar businesses getting shut down or shutting down great ideas simply because no one dared to say, we don't trust each other right now.
Yeah.
We are terrified of losing control, which, by the way, holds also true in any boardroom, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the moment that you name the thing that everybody's dancing around, it's like the whole room starts to breathe again. And naming isn't confrontation. Naming is liberation. It creates flow again, and innovation thrives, as you know, on flow, on clarity, on honesty, on authenticity, on momentum. So naming the elephant is often the inflection point where fear turns into possibilities.
Yeah. I love that you said that. This is something I think a lot of executive teams deal with, but then I feel like the stakes somehow get even higher when you're talking about a family business, and people almost become, they kind of take stepping on those eggshells. It becomes even harder to attack the real problem because something about that family dynamic creates challenge of just being able to say what you need to say. Why do you think that is? And how can leaders recognize that they're dealing with that?
They recognize it, but the pain of mentioning it is so hard. There's so much energy already in the room that very often they can't. And that's the problem. Too much has happened unsaid that often it's huge. And that's often why they need a facilitator or a coach to help them to work through these issues. And suddenly they mention it and everything changes. It's just amazing. So there's too much pain. And I've seen situations where people basically prefer that the company collapse than to bring up the unspoken.
That's major, to think about the fact that somebody would rather it just dissolve than dig in and have some of those hard conversations. I want to talk a little bit about the neuroscience behind this, or maybe the systems thinking behind this. I mean, oftentimes, emotions do shape our decisions. So in your work, how do you help people understand some of these inner dynamics that are taking place? Like, how do you help them to find that safety to have some
Yeah.
hard conversations?
Yes. And a lot of the work that I do is in that intersection of neuroscience and systems thinking. And one of the things that I've learned is that most leaders don't have decision-making problems. They have emotion naming problems. And you can have the best strategy in the world. But if your nervous system is in a state of threat, right, where you get this famous flight, fight, or freeze syndrome, where your chest feels tight, you're shallow, you're breathing, you get a defensive posture, right? That's where you will default to safety and not to innovation. And when leaders start understanding their inner dynamics, these what we call somatic signals, the emotional patterns, that's where they start to make decisions from a regulated place, not from a reactive one. And that's where kind of bolder, more courageous choices start to emerge. You literally can see it coming up, and not from the adrenaline, but from groundedness, from balance, from being standing in with both feet on the ground, and not from trying to be fearless, but from learning to work with fear skillfully. That's when innovation stops being a performance and it becomes a practice. And I'm teaching at several universities in the United States, and one of the things where we are teaching that flight or freeze syndrome, we talk about flipping the lid. Did you ever hear that word?
Mm-hmm.
No, if not, I go deeper into it.
Yeah, go deeper. I mean, I may think I understand, but I would love to hear from you.
Okay, so let's talk for a moment about what actually happens when the emotions start taking over, right? And this is actually, it's not something I invented. It's from Dr. Dan Siegel. And it's one of the most simple ways and useful ways to explain what's happening when, we get triggered. So imagine that this is your brain, right? And this is your, let's say, the spinal cord and your brainstem. This is where your basic survival functions, your breathing, your heart rate takes place. And this is the palm. This is the limbic area. This is where your emotions are in your drive center. And this my thumb is your what we call the amygdala, which is where's your threat detection and your emotional tagging of memories. Basically, this is your survival system. And the fingers that fold over all this system is your cerebral cortex, right? This is in here front is the prefrontal cortex. This is where all your planning is, your impulses, control your empathy, perspective taking, your rationality, even your capacity to speak. Okay, this is a neuroscientist, but this is a very simple way to understand your brain. Now, when your fingers are down, the cortex and the limbic system, they're connected. You can think and you can feel at the same time. But when your amygdala, the thumb, remember, detects a threat, and that can be our ancestors 5,000 years ago, a tiger walking in the forest attacking you, a threat, right? But today, the same threat is any psychological threat. The same thing happens if a lion is attacking you or you have a psychological threat. And this is where your amygdala detects the threat and it flips your lid. So basically your cortex, your intelligence system goes offline, right? And your limbic system, that old system of your brain, runs the show. Your fight, your flight, or your freeze. And what we do as coaches, we help our clients to relower those fingers, to breathe, to pause, and to name the feeling so that prefrontal cortex comes back online. And this is what we call the amygdala hijack, right? The amygdala gets activated, we flip our lid, and we're done for. Maybe it happened that you ever went into a meeting and was a bit tense and nervous and whatever.
Yep.
And you come out of the meeting and 20 minutes later you say, gosh, I wish I had said this differently, or I wish I used these words and whatever.
Mhm.
What happened? You flipped your lid.
Yeah.
Couldn't think at your
Yeah.
best.
That is a powerful way to explain it. I've heard the term. I study a lot of those same things that you study. However, I've never heard it described like that. And I think that's a really interesting way that when we're in the moment in one of those situations, we can actually think of that example and ask ourselves, where are we at? It's a visual example of where we actually are in that moment. And what should someone do if they're about to flip their lid or if they've already flipped it? Like what's their path forward there?
Well, first of all, start learning the signals, right? And recognize, create that awareness. Hey, I'm out of it here at this moment. And mindfulness is a great tool, but the simplest tool of getting back under control is breathing. The most primitive and most basic system that we have in survival is breathing deeply. Do some box breathing and nobody will realize you do it. Inhale 4 seconds, keep the air in for 6 seconds and exhale for 7 seconds. And you can do it in any meeting. Nobody realizes that you're box breathing. You do that 3 times and everything starts to become calmer. And this is where you allow the brain to get online again. Then there's a whole bunch of things you can do, meditation and whatever, but breathing, just
Yeah.
simple breathing.
Yeah. I would love to maybe talk about an example you can share, maybe names and locations redacted, but can you share kind of a coaching experience that you've had and maybe what were some of the hard things that you were helping people work through? And then what did it feel like or look like to them on the other side of that, breakthrough?
So many stories, and obviously for client confidentiality, I cannot give you names, but one story that I remember well are 2 brothers that I worked with. And when I met them for the first time, they ran a hugely successful business. It was actually a global business. And on paper, they were the dream team. They would drive together home whenever they could to after leaving the office and so on. But the moment I walked into the boardroom with them for the first time, I could feel that kind of subtle stiffness, that kind of hesitation before one or the other spoke, also the kind of quick interruptions. And there was this kind of sense of passive aggressiveness, not really conflict, but more like a caution, like a lack of authenticity. And by the way, which is often worse because it hides the real story underneath. And so I spent the following weeks working with them individually in coaching sessions. And both of them, in different ways, they circled around the same thing without quite touching it. Their old roles, their old comparisons, things from their youth. One always felt favored of the other. Fathers whose expectations shaped the air they were breathing, actually. It wasn't really dramatic, but there was just this deep underlying pressure. And so a few months later, the 3 of us, we sat together again. And I remember this so clearly. It was this great clarifying moments from one took a long breath and you could feel that breath. And a breath that doesn't come from the lungs, it comes from deeper, from the soul, almost. And he said to his brother, look, I'm not trying to block you or standing in your way. I am just trying to outrun the fear that I'll never measure up to that. And these were older men. And Dad was already, he passed away 25 years ago. And the other brother, he went absolutely still. It was like someone had turned off the noise in the room. It became absolute silence. And he said, I thought I was the only one dealing with that. And so there was kind of a big emotional explosion. It was something deep was coming out. And a truth that never had been spoken up. And when that came out, one had the courage to say something that was stuck for more than 25 years. And the other acknowledged that he was sitting exactly with the same feeling, right? When that truth came out, it did what truth always does. It freed up energy. And suddenly their creativity came back online, and they started bouncing ideas instead of defending positions, and it reopened new product concepts that were stuck. They redesigned part of their family and corporate governance that always was kind of too sensitive to touch, and everything became lighter. And because innovation, it doesn't start with something we put on paper. It starts with naming the things we are most afraid to say. And for them, it was kind of opening a new doorway for everything to come afterwards. Very powerful.
That is extremely powerful. And I do think about the fact that so often when your brain is hijacked, you can't innovate, right? Innovation does not flourish in a place where people are afraid, where there's a lot of fear, where there's lack, or where there's even boundaries where they're unhealthy boundaries where, okay, I know I can't cross into this area, or I know I can't say this thing. If I say this thing, then what's going to happen next? And I find so often that naming the fear is so big in helping people experience breakthrough. And really, the way I would often say it is, the lies we believe become lids on our life, right? Like they just become a lid that don't enable us to get to the next level. And that's, it's weird to say it out loud, but you're like, yeah, that is a lie that I can't measure up. I'm telling her when the fact that we're using measuring speech just in the first place is the heart's heart, right? That's something that none of us would live up to, the measuring stick. And so we almost have to revision our life a little differently in that moment.
I love that measuring stick, and it's so hard because we have a tendency to do that. And actually, I think in modern life, it became even bigger, this measuring stick, because there's so much information.
Yeah.
There's so many people doing better, whatever better is, right? And are more beautiful and more successful and do more exciting stuff and whatever. And they're smarter and they have a better idea and they became richer, faster. And
Yeah,
it's exhausting.
it is. It is. And I think if we can understand that exhaustion wears us out and it doesn't actually allow us to be innovative and creative when we're constantly measuring ourselves against others, we don't get the best version of ourselves. We get almost like a forfeited version where we're trying to just look like someone else. And it's easy to say, it's harder to live because sometimes we don't even realize we're doing it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It happens totally unconscious. And that's where awareness is so important. And, to be aware about yourself and to be honest with yourself and not to believe the stories you tell yourself or the stories that you believe you need to tell in order to be appreciated by others.
Yes.
And I think authenticity, it is becoming a rare commodity
Yes.
in our society.
Absolutely. And I think social media breeds that, right? Where we only want to put our best face forward and we only want to show the side of ourselves that we want everyone to see. When, I really like, for example, we're both in these little square boxes, but I've got papers everywhere because I'm in the middle of doing like I'll call it a fall or winter cleaning, right? But you can't see any of that. All you get to see is this little box where everything looks perfect, right? And that
Perfect screen, yes.
Yes, that's how we live our life sometimes.
Yeah. And you know what? It's great to be messy. Why not? It's great to have some paper. It's your order.
Yeah, my husband would disagree. The Marine in him would not appreciate the papers. But you're right. I mean, for creative people, we are often messy in our creative exploration. And so even in that, it's okay to say, you know what? There are some things that are out of order, but it's part of my creative process. Okay, so I have to ask a question, and I would love to know more about your journey and where you live and how that's been. You said something really interesting to me that, is just a great part of your family, and it's a nice kind of place that you guys live in. And I'd love to know more about like how do you think about business and family balance, and even in where you live, and some of those things.
Yeah, for me, I have 5 kids, and that maybe explains, something about my values. Family, obviously, it's a very important value for me, and family life. And I'm born in the Netherlands. I had loving parents, I loved them. They don't live anymore, but I have the best memories of my youth, my parents. I still have a brother living in the Netherlands. Amazing, amazing man. We have great relationship, but it was kind of a small Protestant family. And I met my first wife. I met her in Curacao while I was working there as a tax lawyer, and she invited me over to Argentina. I I fell in love with her. I fell in love with Argentina. And I fell in love with the lifestyle. For me, living in a large Latin family was waking up in a Fellini movie every day. The drama, the emotions. We would come all together on Friday evening, and the family of my in-laws, they were business owners, and so like any good family business, everything is around the business and so on. And so we would start with with the entree, with the dinner, and then slowly but surely the conversation about business and whatever started to get heated up, and and then comes a moment that everybody's shouting with each other, and then everybody's crying, and then everybody's embracing each other and kissing each other, and I love that. And after Argentina, I went to Switzerland. Beautiful country, amazing. Geneva, it's postcard perfect, everything. But I like more that Latin big family life, and so I found Uruguay. I knew Uruguay because I went to a lot on vacation while I was living in Argentina. There's this place called Punta del Este, which in our summertime, which is the U.S. wintertime, lots of the rich and famous, they come here. And it's kind of I compare it, and I don't know it because I wasn't born there, but like California in the late 50s, kind of or early 60s, kind of laid back hippie chic type of environment, very safe, incredible. The Uruguayan people are amazing. It's the country in Latin America with the highest GDP. It has the lowest rate of corruption of the entire American, North and South American continent. It's the 14th democracy according to the United Nations rated. Everybody is connected to fiber optics. All kids get a computer from the government, so there's democracy in information and so on. The country's doing well. It's a big messiness all around us in Argentina, in Brazil, great countries, but a lot of rumbling and ups and downs economically. And this country is maybe not the most exciting country in the world, but it's free. There's a lot of space. It's very safe. Things are predictable. We don't have racial or religious issues. They simply don't exist. And it's great to live here. It's great to grow my kids, to grow them up, and then they're free to fly wherever they want to go. But from a family life perspective, this is a pretty good place. It's far away from the rest of the world. I mean, that's one of the disadvantages. In Europe, you live in Geneva, you fly to Prague for 1 weekend, and then to Budapest and to Madrid, and every weekend you're in another city, and it's all very nearby. Here you're far away. That's the only thing. But maybe that's also what keeps this country as it is. I don't know.
Oh, it's beautiful. So everyone needs to look up where you live because I just did it. And I'm like exported into just an amazing place, and it's just gorgeous there. So that's amazing. And I feel like even as you're talking about kind of some of the elephant in the room with family, a lot of the conversation that leaders need to be having too is, do we live in a place that allows us to cultivate our family in a way that we want to live in the way we want to really have the right ecosystem around us to innovate in the first place. And that's just a bigger conversation. Even at, where I live, it's starting to get more and more busy, and we're starting to dream about, some land or some space or some, and you just realize how innovation breeds wherever you feel like you have a really good ecosystem around you. Well, it's awesome. Okay, well, tell people where to find and follow you, and share your book one more time so people can see it as well.
I have it here on my desk, on my messy desk. So this is the book. It's called The Elephant in the Family Room, Managing the Complexities of Legacy Business. You can find it everywhere on all the big platforms, Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, Indie Reader, and so on. And people can find me very simple by just going to my website, www.renesonneveld.com. And, you can connect with me through my website. There's a lot of information on what I do, some of the publications that I've been involved with, and white papers I wrote and so on. So it's all there. And that's probably the easiest way.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time today. This has been really enlightening and just very interesting to think about this topic and really just lean into hopefully reflecting on our own lives and some of the questions that you answered there.
Yeah. And thank you, Natalie. And thank you. And thank also everyone listening in. If this conversation sparked something in you, then trust that spark, because innovation starts with that spark. That's where the courage is to see what's really happening and the imagination to create what's possible. So these are my parting words.
I love those parting words. It's awesome. Well, to our listeners, thank you for joining the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast. Remember, don't just get out of the box, break the box and set it on fire. Let's go transform something.
There we go.
Thank you for joining us for the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast. Be sure to subscribe to our show on iTunes. Follow us on Instagram or Facebook at Innovation Meets Leadership, and visit our site at innovationmeetsleadership.com for more innovation resources.
Hey, my new book is out, Set It on Fire, The Art of Innovation. Click on the link to learn more. And don't just get out of the box, break the box and set it on fire. Let's go transform something.